Hello there, I'm K-Ball, and welcome to Human Skills, where I interview tech industry leaders about all the non-technical skills that go into success in the tech industry. Mo Villagran has a unique background. Starting in statistical genetics, she moved into actuarial science and from there into data analytics. Through that time, she had to deal with a wide variety of different stakeholders, from law enforcement officers to healthcare providers, and over time, she developed a 7-step system for stakeholder management that she's turned into a book. Of course, we talked about that system in our conversation, and it was striking to me how many of the methods that work for data analytics stakeholders are similar to methods we've used in software development. But the conversation didn't stop there. We moved through stakeholder management into cultural norms, communication, and how to teach yourself to succeed in US corporate culture, even if you come from somewhere with very different norms. One quick note, we had some audio challenges at the start. I cleaned it up as best I could, but if you find them bothering you, skip forward to about the 8-minute mark. And with that, please enjoy this conversation with Mo Villagran. Mo, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, Kevin?
It's good. Thanks. I'm excited to have you here. Maybe let's start with, can you share a little bit about yourself and your background and how you came to care about these things I've been calling human skills?
Yeah, sure, yeah. So I started my data analytics journey a little bit different than other people. I started as a statistical geneticist and then kind of stumbled upon actuarial science. I joined, pricing Obamacare. And so I intersect with a lot of people from different fields, from scientists, and then there's the payers, insurers in general. And then I went into fraud detection for the government Medicare program. And there I encountered even more diverse group of people, like the nurses, the law enforcement. And then just all these experience kind of accumulated to a point I realized, data is just not data. It's about communication. Like when they look at it, they say it different ways, and you just have to navigate through that with good, solid communication.
That makes sense. Cool. And I know you have thought about this a lot, and you actually formalized how you think about your communication. Do you want to share a little bit about your approach?
Yeah, so I was in consulting for about 3 years, and starting out that back then ClickView was pretty popular, and we're building the dashboards. And when I was building it, I was like, no, I don't have any input from the users. How will I know what they want? And so I talked to my boss, and he said, because consulting you have to be built by build like hour, so they don't want us to have too much contact with the clients, and so that kind of prevents me from knowing what they wanted or even to demo in real time, like what this can be and what is the potential of this dashboard. And because of that, it kind of just didn't get used, like the fate of most dashboards in the world. And so that's really what got me going and thinking about, I want them to use it. And if I wanted to use it, I must talk to the end users. And that's when I really started to formulate this process. Not just that there's a need for regular communication, but how do you do that regularly without annoying people and get to the point that people from different fields that can talk to you just as easy as they are talking to their colleagues.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like it's always tricky to connect with people who have a very different background for
Right.
you. So how do you think about kind of making that connection and making sure that you're positioning what you're saying in a way that people can hear?
The first step is listening. As simple as it is, but it's extremely crucial. That, when, for example, law enforcement, when they come to you, what usually happens is that they want a yes and no answer because that's what they do. Yes, there's a fraud. We're going to do a warrant, arrest that person. No, we do nothing. But the thing is, you know how data analytics is. Like, it's not a clear answer. And I don't want to accidentally send people to jail. So what I do is I listen to what they're saying. And they said they have this need to do X, Y, and Z. And then I just take a step back. Look, this is what it is. And I hear what you say. And I paraphrase. Like, you say A, B, and C. This is what I understand. Is that right? They were like, oh, it's right. So then we can get to the point that you can find the problems And usually the problems is not what they say. Like, they say maybe it's just a problem of, unclear data. Or maybe it's a problem of they need different kinds of data pulled. And if you don't listen and paraphrase, you're never going to get there. So that is the
Yeah.
beginning.
Do you have any kind of techniques you use for that paraphrasing, or how you think about, like,
Yeah.
how am I going to say this back to them?
Yeah, so there are actually 3 levels. You see how much I think about this. So the first level is the easiest one. It's called repeat. So if I don't know anything about you, let's say I'm talking to an astronaut and I suck at physics, okay? He says something I don't understand, or she says something I don't understand. I'm just gonna say it back to him. Like, are you saying that the aerospace pressure is gonna do this to the spaceship? Like, I'm basically repeating it, right? And then people understand, like, social cue usually is there. Like, they're, oh, okay, so this person doesn't really understand what I'm saying at all. And so they say it in a different way. So it's like a way to push the conversation forward without saying, I have a dumb question, or I have, it disrupts the communication flow. And that's not what I want. I want the conversation to flow, not like transactional. And so that's first step. If you don't know anything about like finance or, let's say SAP, or just completely out of it, you're like, okay, so this is what you said, right? So that's first step. Once you get over that, and hopefully when you're that naive, there's managers or your stakeholders that can help you out a little bit, right? Once you get to the second step, it's called the saying your own words. For example, the accountants, they're like, oh, we need to close this month. There are certain things that Ref 606, and they're like, what's Ref 606? And they just keep going on and on. And it's like, okay, did I hear right that you say you want to close the book? So this is on my own words. I'm not saying close the monitoring. You want to close the book. You want certain summaries. You're not getting it. Is that right? So this is level second, the second level. Like, I am internalizing it with my own words. So this takes a little time to practice, right? If you have contact with these people, it's getting easier. The third level is the level that I strive to do. It's also going to take the longest, but it's the most effective one. If the financial people come to you, you're not going to say, okay, so how the company is doing. You're not going to say, oh, how's it going? How much money do we make? That doesn't make any sense. You have to talk about EBITDA. That is the word they're using to assess the health of the company. For the lender, for anyone that they talk to, the board, because I worked with them for a while, so I'm like, oh, you want EBITDA? Okay, so I can get it for you. And that's because I have accumulated experience to the point that I'm not even saying in my own word or repeating, I'm talking their own lingo. And that's how I see the progression of paraphrasing. But it takes practice.
Got it. So just to play back, first is repeat what they said.
Right.
Second level, paraphrase in your own words.
Correct.
Third level, paraphrasing but using their lingo.
Correct.
And their language.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Let's keep following this path down. So you've talked about kind of how you paraphrase back at 3 different levels, what you're hearing
Correct.
and listening. What's your next step in making sure that you're getting what folks are needing?
Well, I think through the paraphrasing step, there's going to be some sort of feedback. That's when you know that, okay, everyone's on the same page. And so the next level, I think that's like the indicator. It's pretty clear when you're talking back and they hear what you're saying. The next level is like find the problem. That's when like the priority needs to be worked out, because usually what they say, what their problem is not what it is, most likely, right? And so
Totally.
All right. So that would be the next step. Find the actual problem.
Okay. How do you do that?
So this is more priority. So for example, the CEO might be very happy that the company is doing automation, but then the CTO might be wanting something more complicated or more sophisticated in data analytics. My suggestion is when you engage with the stakeholder, just stick to the main stakeholder and know what they want to be done, and just stick with that, because you're not really in charge of the overarching data structure or data strategy when you're going with the project. So you just to make sure that the main stakeholder is getting exactly what they need and just go from there. And I will say that is counts as you find the problem.
Got it. So it's identifying what that key stakeholder actually needs.
Right. Just at the moment. I know people and sometimes I do the same thing, right? Like, for example, my company has a lot of lab systems and it sounds really complicated because every lab system is upgraded at a different time. And so it creates like this feeling that, okay, if I'm gonna get the data, what if the data doesn't match? Comparing apples to orange, it's not gonna be good. And so you kind of need to take a step back. Like you're not trying to upgrade their data at the same time because it's not possible. You're trying to find something just common that's easily solvable and what they need. So, for example, they don't have insight into anything that they know. Like, for example, is it fast enough? Like, is the testing done efficiently and stuff like that? So you want to say, okay, we know when the samples is received and we know when the testing starts, regardless of what kind of samples you have. Let's just focus on that. And then just go from there because everything that you want to do can be a big problem. But if you just solve one at a time, it's good for morale because you know that you're solving it and you feel good, right? And the stakeholders also see like, oh, okay, Mo is competent. She's solving it. Or, so and so is doing the best that they could. And then from there, they also feel encouraged because they see things happen really quickly and they want to engage more. There's, oh, if you can solve this problem, even just a little bit, how about we push a little longer, further? And so that's how I approach it. I know that people don't do very well when it's like this glamorous problem, which is usually what happens in the company, right? There's so many problems. I can't handle either. And so yeah, find the problem, like small ones to
Got
begin.
it. So people will come to you with all of these different things. You say, okay, let me narrow that down to something I can actually deliver and
Right.
quickly.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's also another time that the next step is actually find the solutions because you have a problem. It can be solved in so many different ways. I don't like to say yes to things I cannot deliver. It's just something that I push back, and over the years I've learned like if I can't deliver something, I'm just gonna say I can't because it's my career, and also I want you to have something that you need. If I cannot fulfill that, it's bad for everybody. And if it's what you need is not actually what you need, and I need to tell you that. Like for example, AI. There are many use cases that AI is gonna work, but there are also many times that you don't need it. For my professional experience, I'm recommending that maybe you don't need it yet. So if you really want it, then I can't help you, right? Because I have made the assessment that you can find someone else. I cannot deliver something that it doesn't help you.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that can be really hard though, of like this person is asking for a thing and you say, you know what? I'm not going to give you that thing.
But I'm not gonna say it that way, right? Like, and this is a customer service, like so you really want AI, and then let's go through the listening step again. You say you want AI, why? And then you say because everyone is doing it, we feel behind. We're not doing this. I said, okay, that is a legitimate feeling. What use cases do you think is possible? Let's list a few. Do you, and your business type. What's your business problem? And then they can start listing out, and then we can go through this process, like one by one, like which use case will it benefit from AI technology? Okay, if it does, is there a simpler solution that can actually solve the problem right now before you spend that much money, right? And I understand that if you work for a consulting firm versus an employee at a company, your approach will be very different because there is a different billing model, there's a different motivation. I'm not gonna get into it. But what I'm saying is you need to focus on the things that people need now.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I like your approach of kind of let's start from what you're actually trying to accomplish.
Right.
And rather than your proposed solution for that, let's actually look at how can we give you the value that you want.
Right.
Awesome. Okay. So if I'm recapping your steps so far, you have listen, um,
Paraphrase.
paraphrase. Well, actually, can you recap your steps so far? And
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Listen. There's paraphrase, and as once everyone's understanding each other, then you have find problems, and then we're gonna get to provide
Mhm.
solutions, which is like the priority kind of thing. It gets a little murky, but again, if your focus is on what they actually need, it's gonna be simpler just from that angle.
Yeah. Um, so I'd actually like to dig into that a little bit more. Do you have
Okay.
particular questions you ask or other ways you kind of dig through the from the place of okay, here's the thing I'm saying to what do you actually need?
I don't have a set process. It usually depends on how what I heard from what they say. So if they are really strong on most of the time, they're not very strong on a solution. Most of the time, they come in as like a complaint, like we spend hours doing this. It's exhausting to do the reporting month after month. We need something, but they don't know what it is. Maybe a dashboard, and maybe it's a automated report sent to your email, not a dashboard, just a report. And maybe it's an overhaul of the whole database, because the database is so outdated, it needs to upgrade the whole thing. And so it's really through that listening can I understand like, okay, your problem is either deeper than that or you just need a quick automation.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Okay. So we've gotten through to providing solutions, but you told me you have a 7-step method. So what's after you give them a
Yeah.
solution?
Yeah, so after you give a solution, you go through all the difficult part of prioritizing, making everyone like commit to that solution, budget, time, efficiency, whatever. Then you start the project. This is when things kind of just go sideways because you start, everyone was like, great, we want to start. But then no communication until the delivery. That's usually what happened, right? Like it's kind of just when radio silence, whether people, I think it's most of the time just busy. People are busy. It's not like a written something that they do project by project. And so I want to implement this communicate regularly. And how do you do that? There are some details I provide in the 7th step. So communicate regularly doesn't mean you have to talk to everyone every day, once a day, stand up. No, you have to look at it more holistically. Every group has a personality. I work with some groups. They love doing Monday.com. We have tasks. We tag each other. We update regularly. We don't talk to each other that much. It's a task driven. Fine, that's fine. As long as everyone's happy, right? And there's some group, they don't have any set process. They just like when you show them, oh, here's the progress once a week, or a short email, like, this is what happened. Or even by asking questions like, oh, this data point, is that how you need it? And they were like, oh, yeah, even that little conversation is counted as regular communication because they see that there is progress being made. That's why you have problems or questions, right? So I think that it has to be to the group's personality. If they want an update every day, not recommending it, but do it. All right. And if they don't bother, they just want to know that things are making progress, do it once a week. Or maybe twice a week you have a demo, right? This is how what it looks like right now. Anything you want to add, you like the color, the arrangement. And this gets to a point that you also want to make sure all the key stakeholders are there. Like who are the key stakeholders? Because if you talk to like the key stakeholders helper, the helper knows what you're doing, but the stakeholder doesn't know. And this is about like looking better. Like everything that I do, I have to be very intentional. There's so many people that have different things that distract them. You want to make sure that the people that really know that you're doing it, and then you're showing them the results, and the key users will see it. And that is the process.
Okay. So you mentioned like this can vary a lot depending on who it is that those key stakeholders are and how
Yeah.
they like the communication. Are there core elements that you want to make sure you include in this? Like, how do you think about the goals of this continuous communication?
It just makes sure that, because let's say you start off from like step A, usually what happens is the stakeholders realize they want more because they see what you show them. So, I didn't know that Power BI can do this. I want to add this graph. And so from the data people's perspective, they're like, oh, scope creep. I don't want it to be scope creep. Okay, let me explain this better. When they add stuff, I see this as increase in trust because I know you can do it. So you say okay, but that doesn't mean that you need to do all the stuff in the same time frame. It just means that okay, you want to add 3, 4 more things. Can we extend the project a little bit? And I'll still show you the weekly progress. Are we okay? Most likely they will say yes because there are more things that needs to be done, right?
Yeah.
And so you just have to keep up with it. That's why the regular commission is so important because they are going to change their mind, add new things, or you're gonna realize something is wrong with their backend database that might need some time to be fixed, and you wanna save that time for that, and they need to know about it. This delay is not caused by you.
Right. It's funny because this reminds me tremendously of agile software development for a lot of the same
Yeah,
reasons, right? As people
right.
actually see results, their desires change, and that's not a
Yeah,
problem if you account for
no,
that in your process. That's actually success because they're learning and you're learning.
right. And that makes sure that they're actually using it because they must have been clicking through it like, oh, we're missing this. That's what I need.
Hmm.
And that's a good sign. That means they're using it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So the goal in that regular communication, then, as I'm hearing it, is one, like get them actually engaged using it, climbing the trust ladder, making sure that like
Right,
they are trusting you more, and also them realizing and learning more of what they actually need.
right. And through this process, because they're so involved, they feel very emotionally attached. Like it's not like, oh, you just do it and it has it back. Like they feel like they're part of it and they have invested in it. And that's what make the process really like it's really gonna work. Especially for like relationship and trust, side of things.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so that's step 5 in your 7 steps. What's step 6?
Demo in real time. So this is something that people are afraid to do. I understand it. And there are 3 kinds, right? One, dashboard is really easy to demo because it's visual. And there's data science model. Like how do you show model, right? And then the last one is just like regular data pool. Like that's easy. So let's talk about the first one. Dashboard is easy. You show them visually. You walk through it. Does the number look right? Colors, style, visually. Is it too cramped? Is it not too cramped? What do you like? I usually don't project my preference in it because it's something that they look at every day. If they say, Mel, make this look like the Excel table we have, you got it. I don't care. Whatever you want. And if then you're like, it looks really ugly. Can we change it? Yes, we'll change it. Right? It doesn't matter to me. Whatever they want, as long as it makes sense. Okay, and that's number one. Two, data science model. Like say you're predicting sales volume or whatever, and you make this model in Python. Like how do you show it? So what I would like to recommend is that you show them, if you can, kind of simplify the model a little bit in Excel, like in a more table wise way, and show them like this is the number I'm plugging in. Like if I plug in the sales data from last year, this is how much you get from this model. If I make this model a little tighter, like a little overfitting a little bit, this is what it's showing. It's showing like if you overfit, what will happen, and if you let it loose, what will happen. So they get a sense like, okay, first of all, the model is not always correct because people have this feeling that, oh, if you say it's gonna increase by 10%, it must increase by no, it's a proxy. and it depends on what data you plug in. Sometimes the model relies on a third party data. And you can also show them, look, if my data is not enriched by the third party data, what will happen? So they know how much the model is relying on the third party. And then through that process, you can walk them through, okay, you say you want this accuracy, but this is how it's going to affect your model. What makes sense in business? And this is when the stakeholder is really important, because for their business experience, they're going to be able to tell you what makes sense. You cannot decide that for them.
Right. So in some ways, if I'm understanding you correctly, and I'm going to paraphrase back,
Right.
You're showing them what this is, but you're not just showing like here's a thing. You're kind of pulling at the different levers, and you're showing like here are the decisions that were there to be made. I may
Right.
have made one decision, but here's how those, the sort of range of possibilities and how the different
Right.
pieces impact the outcome.
Right. And try to do it in Excel. If not, you can run it in real time. Like, there's always like a button. You just run it. It doesn't matter like how you, as long as it's like, it's not like you're asking them to look at like 10 different things at the same time. You're just like, I want to show you how the decision will happen if you have these different options. And this is very, very important because people say, oh, how accurate do you want your data to be? The answer is as accurate as possible. But that doesn't mean it's right because you might be overfitting the model, right? And if it's so right, in the end, they're going to be like, why didn't you deliver? It didn't happen. Your model is wrong. But it's not wrong. It's because this thing is fluid. And if you don't know stats, like it's hard to explain to people why stats doesn't work sometimes. And so this process is also kind of like an insurance for you. This model is not going to perform exactly that I tell you because 1, 2, 3, 4, all these different things that can affect it. And then they know like, okay, so this is what it is. And I need to input, to share my business experience with you that, okay, this is what's going to, this will make sense to me. And we can continue to run this. And maybe you need to buy new data to enrich your data. Who knows? And so that is just part of the process. And again, it's very interactive. I know some people don't like it, but this is the only way I see that everyone will be happy. Like they'll be happy with each other.
Well, and to me, this seems in many ways a lot like the reverse of your paraphrasing, right? In there, you're trying to make sure that you understand how they're thinking about the problem. And here now you're trying to make sure that they understand how you're thinking about this and approaching it.
Yeah, you can think it that way, yes. Because at the beginning, you're approaching them, but you don't impose your idea, so they're telling you. And then once you understand, you take the technical requirements back, and you come back with the results, the draft. Then you want to make sure that whatever you present makes sense on their end. So this is a two-way street.
Mm-hmm.
And only when that happens can they be happy. Because otherwise, it's like, no, like, who knows what's going on.
Well, and so does that mean you're using some of the same techniques of kind of paraphrasing back the things they originally asked for and how this addresses those, or using their language and things like that?
Yeah, possibly, yes. If it depends on the stakeholder. If they are very technical, I will not talk high level. I will be very technical as well. If they are not very technical, then I will just remain on that high level just to give them simple answers. Most likely, they're not going to be technical. You can be sure that high level is enough. Like you're not going to be like, what's the p-value you're looking for? What's the effect size? And, I don't want to go in there. You just remember, like, is this large enough if we have 10 million people in this data set? Or because, for example, if you talk to an actuary, they want to know PMPM, per member per month cost. How big is your plan? And you're like, oh, we have 4 million members. Okay, so if I want to do this data set or this month, it must be around there. You cannot test it with 2,000 people, right? But if you're doing some product that's smaller, it's mostly the customer base is about 1 million people, and maybe 500,000 is good enough for like certain product line to test it for. So you have to know that context before you can do, because statistical analysis, they can go so many ways. Like even in research, there are outliers, their sample size. They're also then like if you want to do year-to-year comparison, do you have it full year? you know? So you need to understand what they want so the experiment will be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's a reminder of all of these technical decisions that we make are driven by the business outcomes that we're looking for.
That is true.
Okay, so that's 6 steps. What's step 7?
Step seven, it's called deliver exactly what I need. It's basically a kind of like pat on your back because if you do step 1 to 6 correctly, the last step is really just no work. It's like because all throughout you've been talking to each other, you make sure what they want, you added what they wanted. In the end, you just kind of like it's done. Everyone's happy.
Got it. And so this is conceptually how you do stakeholder management for data projects.
Yes.
Have you thought about ways that this process might apply to other types of work, or has it been all in the data domain?
Actually, it works for lots of things. I use it in my personal life. People have been telling me that this is pretty useful for sales because you're also it's a very customer centered approach, right? I use it in my relationship. I talk to people that I don't know or I'm making friends. I listen first, and I'm not very outgoing, but so when people talk to me, I try to listen to see what they're saying, and I kind of just try to match them because that's just how people communicate. Right? If people want to talk to people that are similar to them, not too different.
That makes
Yeah,
sense. Certainly for listening. Do the other steps apply just as well in a personal relationship?
I think demo in real time. You want to show people what you want, you just have to draw it out, or it just makes so much sense when you just show people a picture. Like you're like want like for example like I have this like park mom group that I take my son to, and sometimes they want to go to the park. Now they don't say what park, they show you a picture. Like you want to go here or you want to do potluck. What kind of food do you want? We just show pictures that this is what I'm making. They show a picture. It's just easier, and also in my work or where I'm come from, like I'm from Taiwan, and at the beginning, when I came to the States, it's really hard to understand the social nuances, right? Because it's a second language and Americans have a different way of speaking than most Chinese, right? It's like the opposite basically. And so a lot of times I listen a lot, like to see how people react to certain things, and also just try to show them that if someone something I say and they don't understand, I just trying to draw it out or I show them like this is what I mean, so there is no mistake because you
Mm-hmm.
don't want it to have any doubts of what you said.
Yeah. Well, and I really like that of like people hear all sorts of different things. And so by making it more concrete, you can make sure that you're more aligned and you're agreeing with them.
And also, it's funny because when you listen more, people like you more. People
Totally.
don't get to be listened often. It's surprising, but it's true. Like if you just sit there and listen to people for like 5 minutes, they feel great.
Yeah. Awesome. I'd love to actually kind of go off on a side note here. So you mentioned
Sure.
coming to the US and sort of dealing with some culture clash in some ways. I'm curious how that has played out at work and if you have any approaches that you think about in terms of bridging between different cultures in a workplace.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I want to make some disclaimer because I'm pretty shameless. Like I say what I want, and people always thought that I don't know that what I said is very straightforward. I know. Like I made a conscious decision. Okay, but that's not everyone. When I came to the States, I realized how Americans say it is that they tell you what it is and then provide the reasons. It's like thesis statement, then blah blah blah. 1, 2, 3, right? In Chinese culture, I don't know about other Asian culture, it's the opposite. You first explain the need. Oh, because the company, just company needs this and it will be faster. And so that's why we need a dashboard. In America, it's like, we need a dashboard because blah, blah, blah. So it's like the opposite. So when you talk to American colleague, you want to make sure you get to a point. Like I always tell people, just tell people 30 seconds what you want to say. Like, I want to help you build a dashboard. That's the end of the story. Like, it's basically what I do, right? I want to build a database. Or like, I'm here to help you with your data problems. The end. And well, okay, I get it. Then like, oh, I have years of experience in data engineering, I have this. Doesn't matter. You're here to solve their data problems. Just say it. And then you can say, I can solve your problem because blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
so that's something that I've seen, like, because, different contractors from different countries, you just have to get to the point. That is not how Chinese speak, but that's how Americans, most of the time, you have to get to the point, like, super fast.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other kind of cultural nuances that you've noticed?
Yeah, if you want something, just say it. Like, there is no way, or you don't have to be like, oh, I don't know, like, I really want this, but what, no, if I do well, people will notice. No, you yourself is a product. I'm talking to you, I'm selling you something. I mean, not physical things, but I'm selling you my expertise, I'm selling you my personality. I want your attention. I want to buy your attention. So just say it, right? Like, I mean, how we come up with this podcast is very obvious example. You said you want someone that knows the human side of things. I tell you that I just wrote a book about. So I'm telling you, I want to be on your podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not waiting for you to be like, oh, Mo wrote a book. Maybe she's good to be on my podcast. I just fill in the blank for you. I want it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't want me to be on your podcast, that's fine. At least I said it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, I think that's true, but it can also be really uncomfortable, especially for many of us in tech. We are introverted. We may be shy. Selling feels like, oh, that's something dirty, or that's too pushy. So
I
how did you, was that something that you were able to do naturally, or did you kind of figure out a way to teach yourself to do that?
I do feel uncomfortable when I say things I want that might be too blunt. But what I'm telling you, I mean, I'm convincing myself that there are two things that will happen. I like to say that cry baby gets the milk. It doesn't matter what the baby is sick or the baby really needs milk. If it cries, it will get the milk, right? There are many people in this world. They might not be as competent as you are, but they get what you want. Why? Because they asked for it. And they ask for it. They might take time to match up to your level, but eventually they get it. They win in that sense. So I tell myself, if I want something and I'm not saying it, and people that are not as good as I am, I mean, in my sense, whatever, they get it, I'm happy for them because they have the courage to ask for it. And if I don't do that, I'm doing myself a disservice. So yes, the process is very painful, like because you're gonna say exactly what you want. You're culturally not inclined to do this. Your personality prevents you from doing that. But think about it. What is the downside of this? You don't get anything. Is that good? So that's one way I convince myself. And second is I've noticed that American culture rewards upfront attitude. That's also the thing that we can take advantage of. The American culture rewards people who are bold and upfront about what they want. It might not work in China or Taiwan. I can tell you that it does not work in Taiwan, but it works here. And why not take advantage of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Another thing that I'd kind of like to bring us back to, and I think that they may be it may be related to this. I think you said in your intro a little bit that you kind of went through a few different career paths before you landed in data.
Right.
Do you want to share a little bit about how you navigated that and got into tech and data, and sort of what you have brought with you from those experiences?
Yeah. So Truth be told, I did not have a career plan. Okay. At the beginning, I wanted to be a human geneticist for a very long time since I was a child. And I got into a PhD program that was top in the world, and I was very happy. But the very first month, I realized I made a mistake. I did not like the academia, the real one. I did not really like the book, the news, or how I fantasize it. And so it was only like the chance was presented to me. My professor moved to Connecticut, and that was like right next to Hartford, Connecticut, where the actuarial science is thriving. So I was given, I had to, the long story short, I had to quit my PhD with a master's. And so I could either choose to go for another PhD program or I can work in industry. So I chose to work in the industry. And that's really when the beginning of my career choice changes over time. So I was in actuarial science, and I was really lucky because usually people hire people from the actuarial science major. I don't have any the lineage that they're looking for, but I pitched that I know stats really well. That's what you need on a daily basis, right? Programming, stats, data analysis. That's what I do in genomic research. So this is just swapping of data. It's the same concept, and it's true, and it delivered. But after a while, I don't know if you know actuarial science, is that there's too many tests. By the time I finished the fifth one, they added three more. And I'm not playing this game. I don't. I don't want to play this game. I'm done. And so we moved back to Florida, where my husband lives. He grew up here. And so, you know, and I got this job for detecting fraud for Medicare. That was also kind of like an accident. I thought, it's pretty good. So I did it. And I was really intrigued by the field, and I found $200 million of fraud in genetic testing alone, just that one type. I found other ones, but this is the most obvious one. I went to FBI to give them mentor. I teach them how to do this, how to find your own fraud. They're still doing it. The method is being learned, spread out through different jurisdictions. And so I'm pretty proud of my work there. But again, I guess the common pattern is that if I find myself stuck, of course I'll try to explore all options in front of me in the same position. But at the end of the day, I'm not willing to take what I don't like if I can get out. And it sounds like I don't have any loyalty to what I'm doing. It's not that. I see it as I have the drive to take myself out of a situation that does not suit me anymore. Because
Totally.
I'm not married to a career.
Yeah. Well, and I think one thing that's really nice there is you found ways to make the skills that you built in one domain and pitch them in another domain.
Right.
And this is something I talk with career switchers a lot about, and say, like, it may be you need some new skills for this new career, but don't drop your old skills on the floor. Figure out how you can make them relevant to the new position that you want.
Yeah, it's usually translatable, right? Especially in data. Like I started out with a computational biology major, and then everything does analytics. It's computer, it's programming, data analysis. It's the same thing. It's just different data, and you have to connect the dots for it. You're like, oh, I'm a very smart person. They must see in the resume. No, they don't. They don't have time. I have like my old boss in Aetna. We were looking at resumes. He was like tossing it. He was like, if the first part didn't catch his attention, he just he tossed it. You have to catch people's attention in that 1/3 top part.
Yeah. Well, and that piece there that you just said, you have to connect the dots for people. I think that's also a lot about what you were talking about with how you deal with stakeholders, right? You're giving them the week by week progress. You're connecting the dots on how things are progressing. You're showing things in real time so that they can connect the dots on how do their choices actually manifest
Right.
here.
And the only way you can do it is by listening or by observing them online. Look at their LinkedIn progress. If you're trying to change career, you want to reach out to people. Like, what do they care? And if they post a lot, that's great because then you know exactly what they want or what they like. But if they don't, you just have to kind of make certain guesses, but you can see like what's where they go to school, what's kind of what kind of career association they belong to. You can get a sense.
Can you give an example about how you would use that then in terms of how you like might craft your outreach to them or craft your pitch to them?
Yeah. So when I was getting a actual job, it was really hard because I didn't have the lineage they're looking for, the background. So I actually went on LinkedIn and I found everyone who is an actuary in Hartford, Connecticut, and I emailed all of them. I messaged all of them. But my message was very simple. It's actually just 3 lines. Like I am a statistical geneticist. I know my skill set is useful to you. And how do I know? Because I studied the actuarial science field and I realized, okay, my skill set does apply here. I made that connection already myself. So it's useful because blah. And second, I'm ready to do whatever it takes to because I also know they have exams. I'm willing to invest. I'm studying for the exams already. And last, it's like, look, I'm trying to tell like I'm a very personal person. I'm willing to meet you at your company's lobby for a short informational interview. So it's not like coffee, it's too much. It's not like going to your office, that's too much. It's just I will meet up in your company lobby, which is really low stress, and there is always a security guard, so you're not like some crazy person, right? So they have their space protected, and I actually did several of them. Like eventually, they invite me into their office. So right, it was nice because they found that you're pretty personable and they want to show you the office, and that really worked.
Yeah, I love that. You're being very straightforward. Here's who I am. Here's why I'm relevant.
Yeah,
Uh, here's my ask,
yeah,
and it's small.
yeah.
It's very simple. It's easy to say yes to.
And I'm not asking you to give me a job because I know people hate that, right? I'm not asking you to do anything. I just ask you to come down to your company lobby. So like I thought about a lot of other ways to do it, and I realized that this is like the easiest way because they have nothing to lose.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. Well, I just noticed we're getting actually pretty close to the end of our hour, and I want to make sure we have time. Is there anything we haven't talked about today that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, I think I want to touch on besides the 7 steps. I think there is a very important mindset that I want people to take away from this podcast. Is that very likely or most of the time you kind of the data professionals kind of fall into the mindset that we're like order takers. Whether you think it consciously or not, you kind of become one because they come to with a problem. You want to solve their problem, so you take it and you just kind of start working on it. Just relax. When they throw you a problem, just try to process it because you want to be their trusted advisor. Because I mean, to be honest, you know best, right? Because you work in this field, you know the technology, you know what's possible, what's not possible. What you need to do is just trying to match their business problem with the technology. And so you want to take a step back. Don't think that you just have to solve whatever they tell you to solve. I know it sounds weird, but like you just need to know exactly what they're asking is what they need. Again, because non-tech audience, they don't have the sense to say it like exactly. You need to help
Yeah,
them with that.
totally. I've seen this in engineering a lot where people will come to you they won't come to you with their problem, they'll come to you with a half-baked solution.
Okay, yes.
I think your product should do this. And if you what their suggestion is almost always bad. But if you dig into it, you can find the underlying problem. And then, as you say, you can match it to a solution that's going to better satisfy what they need.
Right. Yeah, and then just have a little back and forth. It doesn't have to be like yes, yes. Or you don't have to say no either. You're just like I'll help you. I can tell you more about it, and then you'd be like tell me more about it. And if are reluctant to tell you more about it, you say look, if you tell me more about it, I can solve it better and faster. Then you're like oh okay, I want to tell you more about it. So it gives people an incentive because sometimes tech requirement is so transactional. People don't like to have that conversation. I get it. It's pretty boring, especially if you have talked to several contractors about the same thing when you're trying to get quotes, and it's really obnoxious. You have to say the same thing over and over again. But given this on incentive, like, look, I am very good at solving your problem if you tell me more, and then we can get this thing done.
All right, that's it for this human skills interview. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking this video and subscribing to this channel. You can also subscribe to the Human Skills newsletter, which there's a link to right down below, to get notified of interviews like this as they come out. Take care, y'all. This is K-Ball signing out.